Hey, sheepdog. So, time for a chat with the chaplain. So, one of the things that a lot of the officers, especially when they're new to law enforcement, that they talk to me about. So, if you're in law enforcement or if you're blue family, you're going to know this. And feel free to share this with someone that is in your circle that maybe doesn't understand or maybe is thinking about going into law enforcement. I had a very cool conversation with a bank teller today. Her fiance is looking to go into law enforcement. And I shared and said, one of the biggest struggles that I see law enforcement go through is struggling with that sense of identity and fulfillment as a police officer, because what will happen is, and this is something that everybody that's been doing law enforcement over about 10 minutes will go, you will do something heroic that most people will never do in their life. Like, the average person will never save a life in their entire life. And if they do, that becomes this anecdote, this story, this high watermark in their life for the rest of their life. And for most officers, I jokingly say, that was a Tuesday. As an officer, you will, and if you're a police officer, you have at some point saved a human life. Young officer that I chaplain, a great guy, fantastic young man. He was telling me his very first week in law enforcement, he saved the life of an infant, a little baby girl. And that is one of the most heroic things you can do, is save a life. And for a man to preserve and protect the life of an innocent, of a young woman, in this case, a baby, it doesn't get any better than that. And then he got his very first complaint filed on him, which, it's just gonna happen. Very, very sad situation. And all these people were around town were running their mouths on Facebook and what have you about how this cop was just a piece of garbage and needed to be kicked off the force because of someone saying something stupid that didn't have a basis in reality. And over time, I think a lot of the folks around town figured out that the person making the claim was full of it. But that is a reality of the badge, and which probably lends itself to the fact that I'm crazy, because I've actually made a decision, and some of you will know this. I am actually entering the police academy to carry a reserve and work part-time in law enforcement. And I'm actually on my way today, very excited about this. I'm headed up to the university that they are the ones that run the police academy locally for me. And I'm headed there now with a cashier's check to pay for the whole thing. And so I was blessed. I had been saving to go day academy starting in August of 2022. And somebody approached me and said, hey, I value what you do, and I'll pay half, which means I actually will go into the academy and not be in debt from it, which is exciting. And that will let me focus on attending the academy. I still have to pay bills, so I'll be doing my service calls and stuff around that. But some of you will know that I do IT work for a living, and I chaplain as a passion. And but going back to that, you will have things happen. Like, I know of an officer that saved a woman and her 2 children. I've talked about him before. Great guy. And saved her and her 2 kids from drowning. And then within a very short amount of time, people were angry with him because a truck matching the description of a stolen vehicle refused to stop. And then the guy drove back to his house and jumped out and got aggressive with the officer and wondered why he was held at gunpoint, wondered why backup arrived from everywhere. Okay, stolen vehicle oftentimes ends in a shootout. In violence, and the guy was very angry. Pull over like a grown-up when you see red and blues behind you. It's a state law, and then within a matter of minutes they'll go, oh, you're not the person, sorry about that, have a great day. So, but that's one of the sad things. I know a local chief in my area that talked a guy out of doing suicide by cop. And it would have been, in my opinion, a justified shoot. I've seen the body camera footage. The officer, there was an officer from another department there, and they both have told me the story. If the average cop was half as trigger happy as the public would be led to believe by our media, because the media never lies. Shocker. And if they were half as trigger happy as they're purported to be, then this man would have been bought and paid for dead right there. And that didn't happen because this officer valued his life as a human being and wanted to get him help. The man was mentally unstable at that moment and he needed help. And that is one of those things that I wish that more people understood. And it's one of the tragedies, it's one of the really sad aspects of law enforcement is if we're going to grandstand and crow about and talk about in the media for weeks or months on end, if we're going to talk about the failures, the disasters, the shortcomings, and there are, trust me, they're out there, then shouldn't we at least get on a megaphone and shout about the triumphs where the officer saves the people from drowning and saves the baby that's not breathing? I've been with officers many times that have saved lives and saved lives from violence. I know a young officer that pulled up to a residence and the guy was barricading himself, was the way the call came in, and was telling his girlfriend, if you leave, I'll kill you. If anyone tries to come get you, I'll kill them. And any cops that show up, I'll kill them. No, he didn't. And but he was claiming that. And this young officer pulled up, opened the side door of his vehicle. She jumped in, and he took off and went away from that situation. And then SWAT was called, and it went from there. And the guy surrendered, and blah blah blah. But we should be celebrating those things, or the officers that sacrifice their lives all the time. And regularly I see things where an officer will be driving on an interstate and somebody's trying to do vehicular suicide. They're trying to meet another vehicle oncoming, and the officer speeds up and goes out in front of the traffic that they're protecting. And they actually sacrifice their life to stop somebody who is suicidal and homicidal. And I have no respect for that. Suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and it's a terrible tragedy. And hear me when I say that. Every human being, if they're honest, at some point or another has had something like that cross their mind, to take their own life. But to do that just spreads the pain to other people. So it solves nothing other than it actually takes the pain that person's feeling and gives it to everybody that cares about them. Not cool. And then to do that in such a way where you take someone else's life too, shame on you. Shame on you. That's terrible. And I have exactly zero respect for that. But for an officer that literally will fly up, I'm driving on an interstate now, they will literally fly up and go around the traffic that they're protecting and meet this threat head on and sacrifice their life. Occasionally you'll hear about that. I see it a lot because of being a chaplain, and I get things sent to me by officers. But that's one of the greatest tragedies out there, is the fact that the public doesn't know how many officers put their lives on the line every day. And I've literally been with officers that were made fun of by people who were like, is that all you guys do, is eat food and stand around? Wish I could get paid to eat food and stand around. And you want to go, so like in my area recently, a car was on fire with somebody inside of it. Not sure of the circumstances, and 2 responding officers went up to the vehicle that was rolling smoke out of it and checked, and there was a person in it. I don't know the circumstances. I don't know if the person 10-15, if they wrecked and went off the road because maybe there was smoke was filling the cab of their vehicle. It's been very hot in the Midwest lately, and there's been a lot of vehicle fires because of that. I don't know. But what I do know is those officers, at great risk to themselves, busted out glass. That's going to cause the fire to come towards them. One of them, from what I saw in the article, crawled into the vehicle and extracted the person that was stuck in it. Before somebody says, well, that's just their job. That's their job. That's what they're paid to do. Well, first off, their pay's crap. They don't do it for the pay. Trust me, they can make more money flipping burgers. What they do it for is they're freaking heroes. And they're doing everything in their power to protect people. And a lot of those officers, the officer very well could have been burned, very well could have been cut by glass and bled to death. And people don't really process that. And the people that don't stop and actually stop and go, no, that's heroic, because they'll go, oh, that firefighter's a hero. Yes, firefighters are heroes. The men and women that put out fires and run into fires are heroes. So what does that make the cop that just ran and literally busted out the glass and climbed into a burning vehicle with no protective gear on? It makes him a hero. And so it's one of the greatest tragedies that I see our law enforcement face, is people that don't understand, because they They don't stop to go, hey, there's stuff I don't hear about. Because I've literally had people go, we really need to rein in these cops because these cops are just out of control. Every day in the news, I'm hearing about somebody getting beat up and killed. No. Every day in the news, you're hearing about a person because it's being grandstanded by the media. And yes, there are tragedies, but if you looked at the number of police officers every day that serve this nation, and then you look at the number of people that get arrested in this nation, and I dare you, I double dog dare you to do it. You see the number of people that are arrested in this nation every day, and then you see the number of people that lose their lives in an altercation with a police officer that they started almost every time. You watch the body camera footage, they were refusing to obey commands, lawful commands of an officer. They could have just stopped and said, you know what, I give up. And then they lost their life. That's not on the officer. And at the end of the day, if you look at those numbers, you're actually safer being arrested by a police officer in this country in almost any case than you are doing things like, I don't know, driving. And if you stop and think about that, if you just obey the lawful commands of an officer. Anyway, I digress, getting off in the weeds there, but it's one of those things that so many officers every day do things, saving someone's life, and it just goes unsung. You don't hear about it. And you don't hear about the guy that was at the park and he was offering drugs to underage girls, and they went back to their family, and their family came to law enforcement, and law enforcement went and intercepted the individual doing it. You're not going to hear about that. You know, you're not going to hear about the person saved from the accident. You're not going to hear about the officers that responded to the MMA fighter that was taller than me. I'm 6'4", and was a cage fighter, was armed with a knife, was mentally unstable, and when his girlfriend broke up with him, he lost his mind, and officers responded and ended up in a foot pursuit with the guy. Yeah, you're not going to hear about that because that's good news, and the media doesn't want you to hear that. You're not going to hear about the officers that again, they rush out into the water, they rush out into the fire, that, you know, you might hear about the officer that had somebody pulled over on the side of the road for doing 120 and he got hit and killed, or she got hit and killed by a speeding motorist. You know, you're not going to hear about the woman that got shot like 8 times going into a garage in a very volatile situation to rescue 2 kids from what turned out to be a shootout. Violence was impending. She got shot about 8 times, and she stood her ground, and she fought back, and she killed the 2 men that tried to murder her and preserve the lives. She lived, and she preserved the lives of the young kids that she was in there to rescue. You're not going to hear about that in the news media because that's good news. But anyway, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you. If you are law enforcement, thank you for what you do. It doesn't go unnoticed. There are good people that see it. There are good people that hear it. So I'm about to go pay for my academy and be done with it. God bless.